Today I'm going to talk about an alternative to squat, bench and deadlift for Jiu-Jitsu athletes and why I think these three are way better. Alright, so the squat, bench and the deadlift, big three in powerlifting, that has a big cultural impact on people's perception of weightlifting, and I think this definitely carries over to Jiu-Jitsu athletes as well. Oftentimes when I'm speaking to an athlete for the first time about their training, I'll ask them, well, what do you do for your training currently? And they'll more than likely quote me some squat numbers and some bench numbers and some deadlift numbers. So people do have this kind of understanding of training. And look, that's great. If you're just the average person trying to go to the gym and get stronger and put a bit of size on and lose a bit of weight and overall be fitter and healthier and happier for that, which you definitely should be doing, well then that's a really good idea. You should go try to get stronger at the squat, the bench and the deadlift. These three lifts are the biggest multi-joint compound lifts in the body that use the most musculature. And as a coach, if you said to me you can only program one lift for the rest of your life, I would be picking one of those three because they recruit the biggest total cross-section of muscle available to us. And that's what we're trying to do a lot of time as coaches, is train the people's soft tissue, and these big lifts will recruit the most of that. That's why we do it. For Jiu-Jitsu, I believe that there are just three better alternatives that we can do, and I'll speak through those and my reasoning as to why. So for the first one, the squat is to replace the high bar back squat with the Zercher squat. So I do have some clients do high bar back squats, 2 to be precise, but out of 70 clients that's not a lot. So I think it really speaks to the preference for the Zercher squat and front loaded squats. The main reason that we don't have people do those, a lot of people, and myself included, would find a lot of difficulty in getting into this externally rotated position anymore due to shoulders and elbows just kind of being a little bit banged up from Jiu-Jitsu over the years. This is certainly a position that I personally could get into in the past, but now having grappled for 8 years, I find that these joints aren't so happy with producing force in this position, and you have to really pull tight on the bar to keep your upper back really tight in a high bar back squat and be tight enough to produce force optimally in the squat. So as a consequence of that, I don't think the high bar back squat's a really good idea, and I much prefer the Zercher, and that's the variation that I run with the majority of my athletes. So with the Zercher squat, there's a couple of things going on. It's front loaded, so we're going to take the bar from behind our center mass to in front of our center mass, and what that's going to do is that's going to shift a little bit more of the load onto our quads, our core, the front, the anterior of our body, and off the posterior of our body, like our back, our glutes, our hamstrings. Now, it's not going to completely deload our back and our glutes. They're still going to work a huge amount in a Zercher squat, particularly your back, as you have to maintain this kind of semi-flexed thoracic position. And then that's another factor, is that you get into this T-spine position, thoracic position, T-spine, which is slightly flexed. And that's a really good position for us to be strong in. That's a very analogous position to the positions that we get into when we're trying to produce compressive force in Jiu-Jitsu. We're trying to finish submissions, we're trying to compress on leg locks, we're trying to produce force when we're passing, or we're trying to engage with our opponent to make a connection to our opponent. So these are forces that we will look to use quite a bit in Jiu-Jitsu, and getting the musculature involved in those actions really strong through Zercher squats is another reason that we just really like them. So after Zercher squats, I'd move on to bench. So I do like bench, and to be honest with you, all my athletes bench, and I think it's a really good upper body lift because upper body strength is really good in Jiu-Jitsu, and benching is a really good way to develop that upper body strength. However, I'd be a big fan of seated barbell overhead press by the same token. I really like seated barbell overhead press because I think we spend a lot of time in overhead positions as Jiu-Jitsu athletes quite a lot, particularly in Nogi, if we're framing. So there is quite a lot of overhead kind of positioning in the sport. And as a consequence of that, it's nice to be strong in that overhead position. Alongside that, your shoulders are going to get a really tough time through a combination of not passing so much, but submissions and resisting submissions like arm bars and kimuras. And I suppose whenever that joint is exposed to load in like a hitchhiker escape or something like that, you're not doing yourself any favors at the joint capsule more than likely, even though if it doesn't feel it at the time, there's probably some accumulation of wear and tear there. So having really strong shoulders is just a good idea as a Jiu-Jitsu athlete in general. So if we can have a combination of improving ourselves in that overhead position, improving ourselves in that overhead range, and then just getting stronger shoulders to kind of, bulletproof, as much as I don't like that expression, to hopefully reduce our injury risk at the shoulder, well then that's excellent as well. Then the last one being the deadlift. So I've did a whole video on this. I really don't think jiu-jitsu athletes should deadlift, particularly, I suppose, I'll speak about it in detail here. The issue with deadlifts is you have to break the inertia of the floor. And the problem with having to break the inertia of the floor is that's a skill within itself that you have to teach people how to do. And it's one of the most challenging parts of the deadlift is breaking the initial inertia of the bar. That skill is not something that jiu-jitsu athletes need to get good at. It's something that deadlifters need to get good at. And if you're a strength athlete who has a focus on strength sports and you do a bit of jiu-jitsu and stuff, but that's fine, but you then, more than anyone, understand the value of that for the deadlift. But I don't think that particular issue is something that jiu-jitsu athletes need to solve. The deadlift's an excellent exercise because it loads the fuck out of your glutes, your hamstrings, your back. And when we're trying to make our athletes stronger, we want to use lifts that give us the best bang for our buck. I really like the RDL as an alternative. It takes all the benefits of the deadlift, the increased recruitment through glutes, hamstrings, back, and it keeps all of that, probably placing a little bit more load on the hamstrings and the glutes because of the lack of having to break the floor. And I understand that if you're breaking the floor properly, again, as a strength athlete, you're not necessarily going to be putting that load on your lower back, but I guarantee you the average person will. So this is speaking to the average person that's trying to get better at jiu-jitsu and is trying to do a bit of weightlifting on the side to make themselves better at that. It's not a skill worth learning unless it's something you particularly want to go and learn. It's just, I find that if you combine that with a lot of hard jiu-jitsu training, your lower back suffers. Your lower back suffers a lot, and then you can't do jiu-jitsu as well because the lower back is such a huge factor in jiu-jitsu, both playing guard, passing, wrestling. There's so many different things that your lower back is an integral part of your structure during that. Compromising it because you want to hit a number on deadlifts, in my opinion, is not a good idea at all. So that's why I really like the RDL. And then the other advantage of the RDL is it trains your grip really nicely. I think if you were doing a combination of RDLs and then like hanging movements and pull-ups, that would be a lot of the grip training that you would need to do. You can do some specific stuff like longer grip holds and pinch grip stuff. You can definitely do that. But just in a broad sense, an 80% rule, like getting really strong at RDLs and really strong at weighted pull-ups will do a huge amount for your grip. So you're getting that benefit with the RDL as well. So some people deadlift and can deadlift as jiu-jitsu athletes. I deadlift as well, but again, I'm a strength coach. I know how to deadlift. If you know how to deadlift and you're a jiu-jitsu athlete, deadlift away. I don't have a hate for the movement. I've just seen over time a lot of people get hurt from deadlifts if they're trying to mix that into being a jiu-jitsu athlete, and I don't understand why it's so important to people to, I want to hit this number on deadlifts. Just pick a better lift to want to hit a number on. Like I said, pick an RDL, pick an overhead press, pick a Zercher squat. There's movements that you could focus on that would give you a much better return on your physicality on the mats than just trying to arbitrarily hit deadlift numbers. And I find that people that are arbitrarily hitting deadlift numbers are really not doing themselves any favors on the mat. So just RDL it instead. I know it sounds stupid, but it does make a difference. Okay, thank you very much for watching. More videos like this coming at you. Follow the channel. My tiny office. He's gonna improve substantially soon. We're gonna move into the bigger room next door. So yeah, see you soon.